Kevin, how you doing this morning?
I'm great. Good morning to you guys.
I appreciate you taking time to be on. I saw an article that you had written in favor of satellite camps. I don't think I'm in favor of them, but I'd be interested in maybe you saying what you think, and of course you always do. I think it's a very good topic for us to talk about. Give your opinion on that.
My thought, Wimp, is from the player's perspective, and it's not so much what I've heard. The argument that I've heard from a lot of people who are in favor of the camps and talk about it from the kids' angle is, they might not get an opportunity if these satellite camps don't occur. I don't totally agree with that. Kids are going to get opportunities. What I like about satellite camps is it broadens their horizons. It gives them a chance to see more coaching staffs from maybe different parts of the country that they couldn't just hop in their car and talk about, like for kids in this area, for example. A kid from Dallas County maybe just can't hop in the car and drive to Ann Arbor or Columbus, Ohio, or Lincoln, Nebraska, or wherever it might be, to see those coaches in action, see how they interact with kids. But if those coaches can come to them, well, maybe that gives them, an opportunity to go someplace that they wouldn't have otherwise had. I don't think a lot of kids are not getting opportunities because I think we're more well-informed than ever. There's more information out there than ever about recruits. There's more ways for them to get in touch with colleges and vice versa. But this way, you can actually see those guys work. You can see the coaches on the field. You can see how the head coach acts with players. Now, of course, you guys know the coaches are going to put their best faces on at these camps, and what you see at the camps is not necessarily what you're going to see on campus if you sign and go there to practice. But I just think it broadens the horizons for young men, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Larry?
Well, I don't know. It's everybody talks about it's going to take away opportunities for kids. Well, the schools still only get 25 scholarships, and I just don't know. Like Harbaugh, unless I'm wrong, and I saw what he was going to do the camp in Prattville this year. And he was going to do it from 9 to 12 one day. Now, come on. You can't evaluate anybody at a football camp from 9 to 12 in one day. So I don't know if it was more just to get the publicity. And then I see it opening up a can of worms. If I go to a high school and I want to have a camp, I'm probably going to have to bring all my equipment and stuff to do it right. And then you're going to have the high schools there wanting you to leave this football, leave this there, because they don't have this stuff. So you get caught in the dilemma of leaving the stuff with these guys, but it's an NCAA violation. I just think it opens up so many things. The NCAA has a hard enough time enforcing the rules now the way they are. You start putting these guys on these high school campuses with all their equipment, running all this stuff. I just think it opens up a can of worms that nobody can deal with. I want to get you to comment about that, Kevin.
Well, I think you hit on something there, Barry, that, Michigan or Penn State, James Franklin really started doing this a couple of years ago when he got up there. I don't think they're doing this necessarily, whether it is to find recruits, as you said. That's not a lot of time to evaluate these guys. I think a big part of this is for the publicity, and especially for a Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, who is trying to put that program back on top. It's a traditional power that hasn't been very powerful for a long time, and he's trying to raise their profile. He's trying to raise his profile with college recruits because he's been in the NFL. So there's no doubt to me that that's a big part of why he started doing this a year ago and why he wants to keep doing it. And you're right. As with anything, there are so many potential issues in doing this. Something that came up in the incredible amount of discussion we've had on this issue is what about regional camps that might be sponsored by, I don't know who they'd be sponsored by, shoe companies. And I know that makes the NCAA nervous, and you hear people say you don't want to see football recruiting go the way of basketball recruiting, where third parties have so much influence. But if you could have regional camps and, coaches in that part of the country could go to Atlanta or somewhere out west in Los Angeles or Dallas or, wherever it might be, and have a number of regional camps, maybe that would cut down on the proliferation of satellite camps, because if this proposal to ban them is tabled on Thursday by the Division I Management Council, which it seems very likely that it's going to be tabled. There's been so much nonsense in the vote itself. I think you're going to see it tabled, so they're going to be allowed to do it, and you're going to see people doing this in June, I fully believe. But it could get out of hand, and probably will get out of hand, and then you're going to have to see the NCAA rein it in.
Kevin, does the inability of Trent Richardson affect the status of Derrick Henry?
That's a good question, Wimp. You know, NFL types like the stereotype. You know, they like to look at guys and they try to find their equivalent. You know, when they're evaluating college players, they'll say, well, he's similar to, or he's the equivalent of a former player at his position. And in a way, it's lazy thinking. You should look at every player as an individual, you know, what his strengths and weaknesses are. So to say that, well, Trent Richardson so far has been a bust in the NFL, or Mark Ingram hasn't really stayed healthy enough and hasn't been dominant in the NFL, although he's gotten better the last couple of years, or Eddie Lacy had a great rookie season and then gained some weight and wasn't as effective. And to use that against Derrick Henry, to me, is ridiculous. To me, that makes you lazy as an NFL scout or a GM or a coach. Derrick Henry's his own man, and you should look at him in that light. And if you want to say, well, Derrick Henry doesn't have the lateral quickness that you're looking for, that's okay. But you also ought to evaluate his strengths as well, and he's got an awful lot of them. So to hold, say, Trent Richardson's failure in the NFL against Derrick Henry, completely nonsense.
Okay.
Kevin, you know, Dad and I are both basketball guys. We're trying to, you know, bring awareness to basketball with this show. I know football dominates this state, and I understand all that. But here's my question. Does the media play any role maybe in covering the sport a little bit better, even if it's something negative or something positive, to bring more awareness to basketball in this state? Does the media have any responsibility to do that, or do they just need to, hey, look at how many clicks are going on certain articles and saying, hey, people aren't reading about basketball, so we're not going to waste our time about writing about it? Does the media have any responsibility to help maybe bring awareness to that sport?
You know, Barry, that's a question I've thought about for a long time and had a lot of discussions with a lot of different people about. I think it's our responsibility to cover things that are of interest to our readers, and it doesn't always have to be a sport that puts 100,000 people in the seats. You know, if there are 15,000 people in Coleman Coliseum when Alabama basketball is going well, that means there aren't just 15,000 people that care about it. And that's something that we should care about. And sometimes you should do, for, again, us in the media, if you just say, well, we're only going to cover it based on what's most, what's going to get the most clicks, well, then we're going to have a lot of bikini pictures from the Floribama, you know? And that's human nature.
That's true.
But sometimes you cover stuff because it's the right thing to do. If we followed that philosophy, we would never have written about UAB football. And UAB football probably wouldn't have come back, and people wouldn't have rallied around it as much if we hadn't reported on it as much as we had. If we hadn't dug out some of the stuff we dug out, it wasn't like, you know, hundreds of thousands of people were clicking on UAB football articles. But that's the largest employer in the city and the state. It was very important what was going on there in terms of, you know, power and maybe the misuse of power. And so we covered it, and we had an impact by covering it. And on a different level, I think basketball is an important sport. It is enjoyed and by a lot of people. Not the same numbers as football, as you said, but that doesn't mean it's not important at all. And it's been frustrating to me over the years as someone who loves basketball that more of my colleagues aren't as interested in that sport as they are in football. And it feels like it's a door that I've kind of been banging my head against for a long time. And I don't always get as much support as I would like to help cover the sport of basketball.
You know, you haven't written an article on this yet, but you're going to.
Are you giving him the topic right now?
Oh, I already. I know he's going to write. He's going to write.
Yeah, I'm always open to suggestions and ideas.
No, I'm not really, but I know it's a tough time of the year. But we have a staff member of Alabama, sort of on Twitter, knocking Auburn, knocking Tennessee, place he's been, maybe in a kidding way, I've always known that more truths are said in jest than anything. That's my belief.
Every joke has some truth to it, right, Wimp?
Yeah. And so I don't know if this is something that Nick Saban will call him in about, or if I'm way off base on this. But I thought it was a good question to you because you're a writer and you look at these things. Is this is this okay?
And obviously you're talking about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
And apparently he was on a recruiting trip, or he was on a trip somewhere, and he was taking pictures of road signs and putting clever hashtags underneath them. And I would imagine Nick Saban's not a fan of that kind of stuff. But Lane Kiffin's of a different generation, and he relates to kids today, and that's that young people live their lives on social media to a great extent, and he has a great ability to relate to the kind of kids that he's recruiting and coaching. So when he gigs Auburn, he puts the score of last year's Iron Bowl on there, and the best part of that one with the Auburn exit sign off of the interstate. Not only did he put the sign of last year's Iron Bowl, or the score of last year's Iron Bowl, he put the score of the people got this wrong. They thought he got the score wrong from the Iron Bowl of 2 years ago. He put 55-19. Well, 55-19 was the score that USC beat Oklahoma by in the 2005 Orange Bowl. That USC team won the national championship. That was the year Auburn was undefeated and didn't get to play the BCS championship game. And people thought Auburn should have gotten the title, but they didn't, even though USC had to vacate it because of NCAA regulations, and of course Kiffin was a coach on that USC team. So that was really a very subtle and almost an intellectual troll right there. So I don't think it's a terrible thing.
Okay.
I'm guessing Nick Saban doesn't think much of it, but I don't know that he would come down on Kiffin for that.
Okay. Well, is Kiffin, is he that arrogant, or does he have the where he just doesn't care? Like, I wouldn't even want to have to get called in Coach Saban's office to get ripped about something like that. I wouldn't even want to take the chance. But it's like, I guess you never hear about what goes on behind closed door. Yeah. What is it about Lane Kiffin that makes him do something like that? I think his coaching on the field is great, but I think those little things right there maybe take away some of his greatness on the field, which keeps athletic directors. I'm talking about the Power 5 from hiring him. I think a lower Division I school would hire him in a second because they'd get instant.
He ain't going there.
But he's not going there. What is it about Lane? I guess you don't get to talk to him, so you don't really know. What is it, Kevin, about that makes him do that?
I think it's just part of his personality. I think he's snarky. I think he likes to poke fun at people. And that's the stuff that got him in trouble as much as anything at his previous head coaching stops was things he said in the media or people he insulted, like Urban Meyer when Lane got to Tennessee as head coach and he accused Urban Meyer of breaking rules, which he hadn't. In that case, Kiffin was wrong, so his insult wasn't even correct. I think that's just who he is, and I think that's the kind of thing that holds him back. And yet, look, all coaches are arrogant to a degree, especially when they're successful. And you look at the success he's had the last 2 years. I mean, turning Blake Sims into a record-setting quarterback at Alabama, and then last year guiding Jake Coker to a national championship, and his play calling in the playoff was just unbelievable. And against Michigan State, and then against Clemson, he has even more reason to be arrogant as a football coach. But in terms of him getting a Power 5 head coaching job, no, I think you're absolutely right. It does not help him at all.
I know. I heard Kirby Smart say one time I was by him. He was talking that Georgia had offered him the defensive coordinator's job and for a lot more money. And he was telling this guy, and I was kind of standing. He said, "Hey, it wasn't worth it for me to go in there and try to explain that to Nick Saban. I didn't want to." He said, "I just forgot it. I forget how much. I just forgot it and just said, look, I ain't about to do that. I ain't about to go in there and tell him I want to go to Georgia's defensive coordinator. I'll just forget the money."
That
was a great line. I was listening and I'm thinking to myself, oh, what a great line that is.
Well, probably the last words you want to hear at Alabama, if you're a player, a coach, a support staff member, is Coach Saban wants to see you in his office.
Yeah, that's right. It was Coach Bryant. I had Coach Bryant's office and that couch that he had went all the way to the floor. Yes. And those guys would come in, as I'm told, even when I talked to people, it was awful, and sit down and ask Coach Bryant about a marriage scholarship, which is a big deal back then. They'd go all the way to the floor, and he'd get out of his desk with those glasses down on his nose and talk to them. They couldn't get their breath. They couldn't get their breath. He was looking down on them, and they were wanting a marriage scholarship, which is something you generally didn't get back then. It was hilarious.
Hey, I'll share this. I'll share this with you guys. A couple of years ago, someone at Alabama in the football building told me, the people in the building, they didn't get to know all the players on the team. They only got to know the people the guys who messed up, because those were the only guys that got called into Coach Saban's office. And someone pointed that out to him, that you ought to call in guys sometimes just to compliment them.
Yeah.
Call in guys who got a 3.0 or did something for community service or did something really nice off the field. And so every time somebody heard the words "Coach Saban wants to see you in his office," it wasn't necessarily because you've done something wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's amazing. Till you think, hey, we won the national championship as a coach, you may say, you stretch your arms out, you're feeling good. Next thing you know, you turn around, this guy's changing the staff after winning the national championship. So, do you ever get to relax at that Alabama football building?
No. According to everybody I've talked to that has worked in there, and that's part of what makes him so good, and it's part of why they've been able. It's probably the main reason why they've been able to sustain this success at that level, is because the head coach never gets comfortable or complacent, and he doesn't let anybody around him get that way either.
Yeah, it's never stale around there. They always got new ideas and new people coming. That's what amazes me, is he never relaxes. He never thinks he's got it figured out. He's always tweaking. And that's hard to do after you win the national championship. Now, you think you would stay with what you had, but not him. He does it his way and his way only.
Kevin, we sure do appreciate
you.
Yeah, we appreciate you being on. This has been a great session, and we appreciate it. And,
Kevin, if you need any topics, Dad'll give you plenty of topics to write about. So if you need any topics during the slow time.
He's done that once or twice through the years, Barry.
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
I appreciate it, guys. Always fun to talk to you.
Thank you. That's Kevin Scarbinsky.